But we begin with a frightening story about cars that suddenly go out of control.
The automatic transmission is a largely North American phenomenon. It's convenient, it makes driving much easier, and in theory, it makes cars safer. But over the past few years, there have been more and more reports of some cars with automatic transmissions suddenly accelerating out of control. And the German Audi cars made from 1978 onwards seem to be particularly involved. Bill Paul has been investigating.
It was July 21st, 1984. The tall ships were visiting Toronto's harbor. After a boat cruise, Madeline Smith and a friend headed for her 1982 Audi 4000S. They got into the car, buckled their seatbelt. Madeline turned the key in the ignition, put her foot on the brake, and put the car into drive. Suddenly, without warning, the car bolted forward out of control. Braking wouldn't stop it. Madeline narrowly missed hitting other cars and children on the dock. To stop the car, she steered for a hydro pole, crashing to a halt only 3 feet from the water's edge.
I was absolutely terrified. Absolutely terrified. I had no idea what was happening. I have a passenger. There are hundreds of other people on this dock. I have no idea why this is happening, and it's an issue of human life.
Did you hit anything besides this pole?
I hit the pole, and thank God. Literally, thank God.
What happened to Madeline Smith's car was a case of sudden acceleration. Sudden or unwanted acceleration occurs when the driver puts the car from park into reverse or drive, and the car suddenly speeds away out of control. And in most cases, the driver cannot stop the car with the brakes.
Sudden acceleration is not unique to Audis. Other fuel-injected automatic transmission cars have also been reported to run away out of control. But the accident rate for Audis, reported to be 1 out of 400, is the highest. Transport Canada already knows of 20 such cases here at home. Over 700 accidents, including 6 deaths, have been reported in the United States, where some of the drivers have ended up facing lawsuits and even prosecution. 10 years in prison is what Lillian Tuma of Boston, Massachusetts faced. She was charged with dangerous driving and vehicular homicide.
They can't put me guilty because I know it was not my fault. I know it's the car's fault, and I almost died myself.
It was at this service station near Boston that Lillian Tuma stopped to get gas for her red 1986 Audi 5000S last June. Her nightmare began when she shifted out of park to leave. The car suddenly jolted backwards across the street. The paint marks are still on the wall where she crashed. Lillian was already terrified, but a moment later, she discovered that one of the gas attendants, a 20-year-old girl, had been dragged under the car. She died on arrival at hospital. Although Lillian's homicide charges were recently thrown out of court, the accident was too traumatic for Lillian to return to the gas station with us.
I don't want to go near where the accident happened, because I will go probably hysterical. I don't want to remember that day. I every day think of it, and it bothers me so much. But if I go there, and I know my car make a scratch on the wall, in a big brick wall, you know, stone wall, and, terrible. I think no one would like to have bad memory like this. It's a nightmare.
Complaints about sudden acceleration are nothing new for Volkswagen, the company that makes the Audi. They've known they may have a serious problem for at least 5 years. While they say they can find no mechanical defect, they've taken several measures to try to correct sudden acceleration. The first was in 1982, when they issued a recall to correct the design of the floor mat. They thought it might be interfering with the gas pedal. And then a year later, in September of 1983, they issued a second recall, this time to deal with the height of the brake pedal. Neither of these measures has stopped accidents from happening. Now there's been a third recall, this time to install an automatic shift lock device, which will prevent the driver from getting out of park without first pressing on the brake. Now, this car
Ingo Meisse is general manager of service and parts for Volkswagen Canada. He's convinced the shift lock device will end the problem of unwanted acceleration.
I would say that it should virtually eliminate it. Of course, one can never find a foolproof solution because you human beings, you know, do from time to time tend to make mistakes.
Do you think that the whole problem can be put down then to human error? Have you discounted the fact that there's a mechanical defect in the car?
Our engineers and technicians, we've investigated each case, and in each case we could not find a mechanical malfunction. So our conclusion was that in those cases the drivers must have made a mistake in that they inadvertently depressed the accelerator while they thought they were on the brake pedal.
To prove their point, Audi set up a demonstration for us. First, they applied full acceleration and then brakes to stop the car. Next, they applied full acceleration and brakes at the same time. Even at 60 kilometers per hour, at full throttle, the car stopped. Audi says that when their brake system is applied, it overrides any malfunction. Therefore, the driver must be making an error.
How can it be so coincidental that so many Audi drivers make that mistake when proportionally it doesn't happen to other cars?
Well, the incident of unattended acceleration is also applicable to other car makers, such as GM, Ford, Nissan, Toyota.
Yes, but not in the numbers for this car. They're saying 1 in 400 in the States. That's tremendously high.
This was one of the reasons, of course, why we stepped up our investigations to see whether there was anything mechanically wrong with our vehicles. And again, we have not found anything. Otherwise, we would have, mechanically corrected it.
In the United States, concern about Audis has reached the point where many parking garages, like this one in New York City, will no longer accept Audi 5000s.
American Standards Testing Bureau, may I help you?
Dr. Paul Ast is an automotive engineer, lawyer, and computer specialist with the New York firm American Standards Testing Bureau, one of the oldest and largest private engineering firms in the U.S. Dr. Ast has investigated 14 cases of Audi sudden acceleration, and he believes it's the car, not the driver, that's at fault. His theory is that in many Audi 5000 models, the problem occurs in the valve which controls the engine's idling speed. This valve is regulated by a microcomputer, and Dr. Ast believes that in certain circumstances, the computer could malfunction, instructing the valve to open fully. If this happens as the car is shifted out of park into gear, a dramatic surge of power would instantly be transmitted to the drive wheels. The result? Sudden, uncontrollable acceleration.
We have good reason to believe that the control unit or the computer might be subject to what we call EMI, or electromagnetic interference. Most people are familiar with the automatic garage door openers that are activated by the use of microwave ovens and so forth like that. I've had 20 years experience in the computer industry, and I'm quite well aware of the fact that certain computer modules can sustain transient malfunctions due to stray radio waves, stray microwaves, or other types of electromagnetic interference.
These problems were all checked out, and again, the engineers have verified through their investigations, their technical investigations, that the malfunctions as described by the other engineers could not have happened.
Transport Canada has investigated 20 reports of Audi sudden acceleration. Their engineers haven't been able to find a defect in the engine, but they do say they have 2 confirmed cases of high engine speed, which they can't explain. Their investigation continues. At the Center for Auto Safety in Washington, Dan Howell is currently receiving, on average, 3 reports of Audi sudden acceleration every day. Each case is filed away in his computer. With over 200 reports this year already, Howell claims this is one of the most serious problems his group has ever seen.
The accident rate stacks the Audi up as the worst rate we've ever seen in an auto defect case in the 18 years we've been monitoring these problems. For comparison, the last major, very serious auto defect that we dealt with at length, which also was extensively publicized and also involved a lot of accidents and a lot of reported complaints, was the X-car brake lockup problem. Still not resolved, by the way. That accident rate for that defect was 1 out of 11,000 at the time the government filed its lawsuit against GM in 1983. The accident rate in the Audis is 1 out of every 400. We've just never seen an accident rate that bad.
I've made operational mistakes on a car I've driven for years. Isn't it possible that people are making operational errors here? They're making mistakes?
First of all, this is the error that Audi contends. They say people are hitting the gas when they mean to brake. If they're doing that, and it happens a lot on Audi 5000 cars, we ought to be seeing these reports coming in when drivers said they meant to brake. But Audi 5000 runaway accidents aren't occurring when people are trying to stop, it's occurring when people are trying to start.
So you just pulled up in the driveway in the Audi, and the engine was running and it was in park.
While we were at the Center for Auto Safety, Dan Howell received 2 calls from victims of Audi sudden acceleration. Up to now, the center's had mostly reports of Audi 5000s. Recently, more reports involving Audi 4000s are coming into the office. What do you tell the consumer with one of these cars in the driveway? What do you do?
All I can say is if you've got to keep driving that vehicle, exercise extreme caution. When you start it up, put your foot on the brake very hard every time you shift into gear, and don't put it into gear when pedestrians are in the vicinity. Be ready to respond immediately when you hear that engine racing. You've got very little time, maybe a second, to get that car shut down before its speed becomes so critical that you may be worried more about steering than
Just
getting
turn the
engine
key off,
shut
you
off.
mean?
Turn the key off right away.
Drive the car in a normal manner, feel comfortable in the car, and we don't think that the normal driver should have a problem. We have informed them that we will make the modification, that they should come in, and this will be done together with dealer and the customer at a convenient date so that we can complete this as quickly as possible to eliminate as much as possible this phenomena from recurring.
I don't like to hear it happen to anybody else because I know what they go through. Because you can't stop the car, it's just real scary. It's a nightmare.
We'd like to stress that no one as yet knows for certain how or why sudden acceleration occurs. We do know that it only happens to cars with automatic transmissions, and that it's not just Audis that are involved. The pattern emerging from the reported incidents is that it seems to happen to large-engined, fuel injection cars, just as they are shifted out of park into drive or reverse. If this should happen to you, you'll have to react very fast. Switch off the ignition immediately. This should enable you to brake to a stop. And don't pull the key out. Your steering will lock if you do. The current Audi recall involves all their 84, 85, and 86 5000 series automatics. Details are now being mailed out to Canadian owners.